Now we'll go ahead and move on to the Army. Got any Army reps in here? Wow, not that many, huh? Just a few. Got one important one over here. So after reaching a high of $144 million in FY10, Army's base budget has normalized a little bit and is back down to $130 billion. Now I've heard some folks complain that FY14 total budget levels are exactly equal to FY06 total budget levels. Well, my counter to that is to try to remember that the base budget has actually increased 30% over that time. Also try to remember that the Army has a higher IT budget than any other federal entity by $2 billion. Army's IT budget is actually higher than the Department of Commerce's total budget. Now the IT budget is flat from last year, but that's being tempered for us by an increase in procurement dollars. You can see in the table at the bottom that the majority of the IT spending is done on IT infrastructure and maintenance and battle space networks. And again, this continues to fit in with our themes of supporting the JIE with investments through infrastructure consolidation and developing common operating environments. Now, some estimates put the total addressable IT market within the Army at about $15 billion, with the addressable market for software products at about $1.5 billion for the year. Now, as you all know, Army is just an enormous enterprise. They employ well over 1 million people. So today we're only going to have time to highlight a few of the relevant IT insertion points, but of course, other insertion points will be included in your territory planner. And again, even though we mentioned it 4 or 5 times throughout the presentation, we always have people ask us, how do we get the planner? How do we get the planner? After the presentation today, fill your survey out online, and you'll have the planner emailed to you. So the Army CIO G6 office, it's like any other 6. It sets policy and standards for the rest of the agency to follow. Now, that includes any and all issues related to information management and network operations and equipping signal forces. Of course, General Lawrence's big push over the last several years has been network modernization. Now, there have been a few personnel changes at the G6 in the past year. Most recently, of course, was Lieutenant General Susan Lawrence's retirement, so Mike Krieger has stepped in as the acting G6. We believe we know who Lieutenant General Lawrence's full-time replacement is going to be, but we're not going to preempt the Army's announcement in this forum today. Additionally, Colonel Keith June replaced Major General James Walton as the Chief Integration Officer. Dean Fultzer replaced Teresa Salazar at the Policy and Resources Office, and then Brigadier General Pete Gallagher is now the acting commanding general of NETCOM when Major General Alan Lynn left for DISA. Lastly, Brigadier General Joseph Brendler replaced Richard Cerny at the Architecture Operations Networks and Space Office. And within that office, located in the lower left part of your slide here, sits the Army Architecture Integration Center led by Gary Blome. Now, Gary told me last month that the G6 is on track to close 185 data centers by FY15. And their major areas of focus besides data center consolidation over the next 2 years are going to be on implementing common operating environments, leveraging standardized and open architectures, and assisting DISA with their mobility pilot. Now, mobility, of course, is an important topic across all of DoD, but also in Army as well, because they really want to collect and share data in real time. They want to foster a more productive and untethered workforce. But Gary said that the problem is that we don't have adequate solutions for securing the data. So unfortunately, in his mind at least, we still have a long way to go before true mobility can be realized and before BYOD can become a reality.
Now we can take a look at Army Cyber Command, which recently underwent a major personnel change, with Lieutenant General Rhett Hernandez passing the torch to Lieutenant General Edward Carden. Headquartered at Fort Belvoir, our cyber was stood up in October of 2010 with the purpose of defending the Army in cyberspace. The command employs 21,000 soldiers and additional civilian and contractor personnel, plus all of the employees from subordinate commands, INSCOM and NETCOM. Based out of Fort Huachuca and led by Brigadier General Pete Gallagher, NETCOM is the Army's IT service provider and cyber protection force. NETCOM defends and operates Army cyberspace while protecting and improving the land war net to allow mission command capabilities for the Army. NETCOM employs over 16,000 soldiers, plus civilian and contractor employees who run network operations for the Army and Joint Forces. Of particular interest to the COTS vendors is the 7th Signal Command, headquartered at Fort Gordon, which provides Army enterprise network capability in CONUS. Additionally, the 7th manages 45 network enterprise centers, or NECs. The NECs are divided up into different regions and are responsible for providing local C4 and information management support. Aside from the 7th, you also want to take a look at the AG NOSC, which is the Network Operations and Security Center of NETCOM.
And now we can switch gears and talk about some of the procurement and program management offices within the Army. So ASALT fields and sustains equipment for the Army. Led by Heidi Shu, ASALT is based here in D.C. and employs over 42,000 people who are essential to the Army's acquisition process. Now, ASALT runs 6 major offices, 10 PEOs, and has a dotted line to PEO EIS. Together, these components provide oversight of the lifecycle management and sustainment of technology and weapon systems for the Army. Now, depending on what types of products you sell, almost any of these offices could offer an opportunity for you, but most likely the most widely relevant offices are going to be PEO EIS, PEO C3T, IEWNS, and maybe Soldier and STRI. Again, some of these we'll cover, some of them we don't have time to cover, but will be included in your territory planner. Now, taking a look at PEO C3T, they have an annual budget of $3 billion and has a workforce of 1,600 personnel. And they develop, deliver, and support more than 40 major Army programs, providing soldiers with communications networks, radios, satellite systems, and other hardware and software that they require to communicate on the battlefield. Now, the PEO maintains tactical communications networks supporting the Army's transition to a smaller but still highly capable force. The Army recognizes that the network is completely critical to both leaders and soldiers to providing the right information at the right time to enable decision-making and mission success. Now, there have been 2 notable personnel changes at C3T recently. General Lee Price handed over leadership of the PEO to Brigadier General Daniel Hughes just this September. And then the project director for communications security also changed hands with Stanley Nemich replacing Chris Manning. For those of you that aren't familiar with PD ComSec, they provide procurement for products that secure Army networks in support of daily garrison network operations and global contingency operations as well. So obviously a good target for your infrastructure and security folks out there. And then the final acquisition organization we'll cover within the Army is PEO EIS, led by Doug Wiltsey at Fort Belvoir. EIS employs 1,300 people who manage about 30% of the Army's IT budget. They spread that budget across 30 programs that focus on enterprise infrastructure, backbone communications, business systems, and biometrics IT systems. Recent personnel changes in this office include Colonel Harry Kulklischer replacing Colonel Pat Flanders as ASIP program manager. Now, within that ASIP office, Lieutenant Colonel Chris Romero replaced Lieutenant Colonel Chris Domke as GCSS program manager. Now, the major concerns for EIS over the years have been converged cloud infrastructure, mobility, big data, and security. Now, we're hearing that Army infrastructure, as we all know, is currently decentralized and extremely fragmented, with multiple data centers just servicing multiple service posts, camp stations, and various virtual end users. But moving forward, EIS wants to assist in reducing the cost of these stovepiped IT systems, improving enterprise services, network access, and for an improved security posture. Also, they'll rely on their enterprise data centers for enterprise email, unified communications, and identity management. Now, there's not a single technology segment that's not going to find a home at some place within EIS. Doesn't matter if you're focused on applications, data management, BPM solutions, or infrastructure, security, whatever you name it, at some point EIS is going to buy it.
And the Army is similar to the Air Force and Navy in that it leverages a lot of BPAs against initiatives like ESI. And it also has a number of large IDIQ vehicles like S3 and ITES, and that it uses to support major programs and to buy IT products. Despite the fact that S3 and these other 6 contract vehicles are the most heavily leveraged, they only represent about 6.5% of total contract spending across the Army. It's worth noting that ITES 3S released a special notice earlier this year and is expected to release an RFP sometime in the next quarter. This will be a $25 billion 9-year MAC that will buy IT solutions and products, including C4ISR products and services. Although the original award date was expected to be at the end of this year, the CHES office told us a realistic date to expect for award would be summer of 2015. Taking a look at the Army's top contractors, no surprises there. Lockheed, Boeing, SAIC, Booz, all in the top 25. Whether they're building weapon systems, integrating technology solutions, information systems, or some other specialty, these are the major SIs that a software and hardware product company may want to consider targeting for sell-through and sell-to opportunities.
So what will be influencing Army's buying activity this year? Well, I got to say that things haven't really changed dramatically over the last few years. At the TechNet conference, Major General Harold Green, who's Deputy for Acquisitions and Systems Management, said that more than ever, budgets are going to be affecting how Army makes its decisions, and if a program doesn't execute, they're going to be making quicker decisions to make sure that it's not a program for very long. Another major force driving Army acquisitions will be network modernization. Again, if you've heard General Lawrence speak at any point over the past several years, you know that the land war net is just the key to the future of the Army. Network modernization has effectively increased bandwidth and allowed for cost savings, which is why this effort continues to receive funds despite budget concerns. And the Army wants to connect installations in a cloud environment as well. EIS did release an RFI back in March for an elastic cloud capability for enterprise-level content management. So what this means is that they're trying to find vendors who can provide cloud-based content repository, enterprise search, records and documents management, and BPM solutions. Now, initially, EIS thought that there might be an RFP issued early on in FY14, but they told me a few weeks ago that they're still reviewing responses to the RFI. Then, of course, we can't talk cloud computing without talking about data center consolidation. And General Joseph Brenler at the G6 told me earlier this month that Army recently increased its count of data centers, and consolidation is just an even bigger project than anybody had initially anticipated. So objectives around consolidation are just going to have to be that much more aggressive. Even though the Army has saved nearly $30 million in the past year from cloud efforts, what remains a challenge for COTS vendors is that these types of initiatives just require heavy upfront investment for the customer. So even if the agencies are realizing ROI within 2 or 3 years, it's just hard for them to justify making that upfront purchase when their budgets are already being squeezed. So for the time being, I'd recommend staying close to General Brenler and Mike Krieger, because remember, any software application and any system that's hosted at the data center level is going to require G6 approval.
And now onto the programs. I know from my experience working with D6 during my deployments overseas with DIA that it was a valuable tool for compiling all-source intelligence and identifying tactics, techniques, and procedures of various groups that were conducting attacks against U.S. troops. D6 is a joint program that started in 2001 to provide ISR management to analysts and decision makers, to support information sharing and situational awareness. In the past, analysts had to go to multiple disparate stations to monitor sensor data. The data was all stovepiped, and so you can see why this created a problem when trying to collect and share intelligence. Its new round of funding will span 2007 through 2033. And D6A will have nearly $300 million in DME funds for FY14 alone. This program, though, has been heavily scrutinized over the past years for high cost and poor performance, and is under scrutiny to leverage more capable COTS solutions. But D6A is the poster child of the DoD drivers that we discussed earlier in the presentation, because it fuses satellite imagery, signals, and human intelligence to improve situational awareness. It also creates a common view and shares information, and all of this requires storage, information management, and cloud solutions. In fact, this may be one of the Army's larger cloud efforts, with millions of dollars in cloud-related contracts being awarded to Compact Federal, which is now HP, and Northrop Grumman over the past couple of years. So you can really see how this investment is relevant to those bigger picture initiatives that contribute to the overall vision of the JIE.
So we did present on this investment last year, and as Lloyd mentioned, you can find the FY13 budget briefing on immixGroup's website. It's just www.immixgroup.com. But I think we'd be remiss if we left it out this year. So the 3 increments of the WIN-T program will spend a combined total of $1.3 billion in FY14. As we showed earlier, the WIN-T program office sits within PEO C3T. This program's led by Colonel Ed Swanson, and it's actually responsible for the execution of 14 different programs, including GTACS, Phoenix, and GBS. Now, WIN-T Increment 1 is led by Product Manager Lieutenant Colonel Joel Babbitt. And Inc. 1 integrates COTS and GOTS solutions into satellite communications packages to help warfighters with tactical communication. WIN-T Inc. 2, which is led by Lieutenant Colonel Robert Collins, improves upon Inc. 1 to provide on-the-move capability. Now, this piece of the program extends the network by delivering the mobile capability with greater network reliability. And then finally, Inc. 3, led by Lieutenant Colonel Ward Roberts, connects users from the theater and company levels to the DISN with an aerial tier. Now, implementing an aerial tier allows for a reduction in satellite traffic, which saves on costs and gives the Army the ability to use bandwidth resources elsewhere. Now, implementation for these products for all three increments has been done by General Dynamics with some support from Viasat and Lockheed Martin. Now, the program is funded from 2007 through 2025 and will have ongoing needs for network administration and management, C4ISR solutions, data protection, and of course, information assurance. And then the last Army investment we're going to cover is going to be the I3MP program, which is another network infrastructure modernization effort. And this one's currently bringing unified communications to Army bases around the world. I3MP provides soldiers with the IT infrastructure that they need by leveraging COT standards and products to create a network-centric enterprise unified capability. It is part of PEO EIS's strategic investments between now and FY14 to improve network capacity and communications. I3MP is supported by the IMOD acquisition, which is actually a group of 10 different IDIQs held by 10 different companies, so General Dynamics, AT&T, Verizon, and SAIC, to name a few. The program has received a large increase in DME funding for the year and will spend $230 million on installations at 10 different bases. Now, providers of security products, telecom products, and network management products are going to find opportunities here. Also, obviously, collaboration tools and cloud providers will be needed in the coming year for I3MP.